Police are speaking with 13-year-old twins Hunter and Levi at first. Both boys appear identical in their reactions, shaken, cooperative, controlled, but investigators already know something the public does. One of them is lying, and the strange part is, they are already speaking to him. The person responsible is not. Missing, he is sitting in the interrogation room helping search for himself and doing it convincingly, enough that no one has noticed yet. It began on a quiet Sunday morning in a small Ohio community. A family member stopped by to check on 64-year-old Janice, but the moment he entered the home, something felt off. Too quiet, too still, like the house had already settled after something had happened. Janice was found unresponsive in her bedroom. Emergency services were called immediately, but responders quickly realized this was not a rescue. It was a crime. Scene: there were signs she hadn't been alone. Disturbed objects, subtle disarray, a sense of interruption. Then beneath her body, investigators found something small, a wristwatch. It didn't belong to her at the time. It seemed insignificant, just another item logged as evidence, but later, that watch would become the first thread pulling the entire case apart. For days, the investigation went nowhere. No forced entry, no clear motive, no suspect, until forensic analysis returned a match for the wristwatch. It was linked to two boys, Hunter and Levi, 13-year-old. Twins known in the area, known to the victim, but not yet considered suspects until now. Detectives interviewed them separately at first. Both accounts seemed stable, almost too stable. Levi repeated his timeline consistently across interviews. Same order, same details, same timing. Hunter did not. At first, the differences were small. A detail shifted. SLIGHTLYA sequence reversed. Nothing dramatic, but noticeable under scrutiny. Then investigators saw something else. Hunter had minor injuries on his hands and forearm scratches that didn't fully align with his. Explanation: when asked about them, he hesitated. Not long enough to be obvious, but long enough to matter, because now investigators weren't just listening to stories, they were watching how those stories held under pressure. This was where certainty began to break, because both twins still fit the evidence. In different ways, Levi was consistent, almost unchanging. Hunter was unstable, but not in a way that proved anything, so investigators shifted focus. Not just what they said, but how they reacted when questioned again. Hunter began adjusting his answers in real time, correcting himself mid-sentence, rebuilding timelines after speaking them, pausing before confirming basic details, as if he was constructing the truth while being asked. That behavior changed everything, because now inconsistencies weren't isolated, they were patterns. Then DNA testing was ordered. Evidence from the scene was compared to both twins. If there was a match, the case would no longer be uncertain. But while they waited, investigators uncovered something else, a piece of evidence that could not belong to both boys, something individual. And once they understood its significance, the direction of the case shifted completely. From this point on, interviews changed, subtly at first, then noticeably. Levi remained stable in every interview. No changes, no corrections, no hesitation. Hunter did not. He began fixing his answers before questions were finished, pausing mid-thought, rephrasing himself immediately after speaking, not to avoid answers, but to control how those answers formed. And that distinction mattered, because now every inconsistency carried weight. Then the DNA results arrived, and everything stopped. One profile matched. The crime scene evidence completely no ambiguity, no alternative interpretation, just alignment. And in that moment, the investigation stopped being about possibilities. It became about confirmation. The report was reviewed more than once, not because it was unclear, but because it was final then. The conclusion was stated directly. Hunter was the brother at the center of the case. And suddenly, everything that came before reassembled itself. The wristwatch was no longer random. The injuries were no longer minor. The inconsistencies were no longer accidental. They were signals, all pointing in the same direction. 1. Twin remained steady under pressure. The other did not, and that difference became the dividing line in the case. For Janice's family, the answer brought closure, but not comfort, because what stayed with them wasn't just the crime itself. It was how close the truth had been. The entire time, the person responsible had never disappeared. He had been inside the investigation from the beginning, answering questions, observing every step, adjusting, just enough to stay ahead of certainty. And in the end, it wasn't a confession that solved the case. It wasn't a single breakthrough. It was pressure applied slowly until the truth could no longer stay intact. And once it broke, there was only one version of events left standing.